So this whole movie was just a story Bill and Ted wrote for their English class, right? Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 1991 sci-fi comedy sequel, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all that extra content. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey stars Alex Winter, Keanu Reeves, and William Sadler, and was directed by Pete Hewitt. It tells the story of friends Bill and Ted, played by Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves, who need to contend with death and evil robots sent from the future to save their girlfriends. Revisiting these Bill and Ted movies ahead of the upcoming third film has been quite the experience. It had been a long time since I last watched these movies, and I now realize that most of my memories came from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure rather than this sequel. I've definitely seen this one before, and there were certainly moments from this film that have stuck with me, but I had forgotten just how crazy this movie is. And I'm struck by how aptly named these Bill and Ted films are. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was indeed pretty excellent, and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey? Well, it's pretty bogus. In my review of the first film, I called it indescribably odd, which it is, by normal standards. But Bogus Journey makes Excellent Adventure look tame. What's stronger than indescribably odd? Completely insane? If so, that's what Bogus Journey is, because this is such a random and strange movie that feels almost nothing like its predecessor. It's a story continuation and has the same characters, so in that sense, it's a sequel, but the tone is so different. It has this much darker tinge to it, and while it's got some enjoyable moments, I wouldn't really say it's fun in the same way that the first film was. Sequels are a tough thing. People have a tendency to want them, but all too often, they retread the same basic plot as the original movie, resulting in a copycat film that can't quite recapture the magic of the first. I don't think Bogus Journey exactly recaptures the magic, but it is certainly no copycat sequel. This movie's a complete scattershot of ideas, somehow managing to be even more random than Bill and Ted traveling to a dozen different time periods in the first movie. In fact, I don't know if I would even classify this as a time travel movie. Other than the fact that the antagonists are evil robots from the future, this film really makes almost no use of its iconic time-traveling phone booth until the finale. So if Bill and Ted aren't traveling through time, what are they doing? Well, they're dying. And that's not some existential metaphor. They actually die. And they possess people, and go to hell, and meet Satan, and they befriend the Grim Reaper, and there are aliens, and evil robots, and good robots, and a battle of the bands. This movie is absolutely nuts, and as entertaining as it can be, I honestly don't know what the writers were possibly thinking. It's such an incredibly random mix of ideas, none of which are logical follow-ups to anything that happened in the first movie. Honestly, this whole story feels like something Bill and Ted wrote for an English assignment. So, beyond its incredibly random story, Bogus Journey is a bit of a mixed bag. Bill and Ted are still good together, but they never quite have that same great chemistry they had in the first film. This could partly be due to the 2 years Reeves and Winter had away from each other in the interim between the two films, but I actually think it has more to do with the dual roles that each are playing in this movie. The evil robot versions of Bill and Ted are certainly different from our good human versions, but it definitely feels like some of the negativity from the evil roles bled into the good performances. It's not horrible or anything, but it does sometimes feel a little forced this time around. Luckily, this movie does have one thing that I have only good things to say about. Death. Wait, what? Yes, the character of Death, the Grim Reaper himself. He is such an awesome character that I find endlessly funny in this movie. When we're first introduced to him, he's a little bit ominous, but it doesn't take long for the comedy to sink in with him. The board game-centric homage to the Seventh Seal is brilliant, and easily my favorite part of the movie. But Death has got so many good lines and sight gags throughout that I find myself enjoying the movie twice as much anytime he's on screen. So while Bogus Journey does have some high points, like Bill and Ted throwing up the devil horns at the devil, it's just too random with its story to be a satisfying follow-up to the first film. Excellent Adventure took an anything-goes approach to its storytelling as well, but this one loses the absurd fun of its predecessor while also throwing the kitchen sink at us, not to mention some robots and aliens. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. The only real pro for me was death. Not a pro I typically have, but the character of the Grim Reaper was just so entertaining to me. And it's all absurd situational stuff, but it's so good. Watching him play Twister, or seeing his expression as he's standing in heaven wearing a dress, or even just seeing him rocking out on the bass. It's all so dumb, but so entertaining. Plus, it results in some pretty great references to the Seventh Seal, not to mention German expressionist films with all the forced perspective sets in hell. On the con side, the biggest issue has gotta be the story. It's all over the place. And while the first film was able to make that work, Bogus Journey just doesn't. Maybe if we didn't already have tonal and character expectations going in, it could have worked better, but even then, it just has so many random ideas that are thrown together, and none of them mesh all that well to come together to tell a reasonable story. If it was just evil robots, or just Bill and Ted in hell, or just aliens, I think it could have formed some semblance of a story, but throwing together all three and more was just too much. The second con's a bit more minor, but it's the visual effects. This was one of my cons of the first movie too, but there, it was kind of endearing and fit in line with the fun, goofy tone of the film. But here, it ends up feeling a bit cheap. The practical effects were fine, like painting Bill and Ted in monochrome colors when they were dead, but things like the phone booth time travel, the seance, or even parts of the possession scene feel more dated than the first movie's visual effects. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey 2.5 out of 5 paws. I'm sure that sounds most heinous to any big Bill and Ted fan, but this is a pretty underwhelming follow-up to Excellent Adventure. Totally nuts, but still underwhelming. I would recommend Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey to people who want to watch an incredibly random and crazy movie. If you like the characters of Bill and Ted and would be happy seeing them do pretty much anything, then you'll probably still enjoy this one in all of its randomness. But if it was more of the tone or story of Excellent Adventure that you enjoyed, I'd be a little more cautious with this one. It's definitely got its entertaining moments, but it's a very different type of movie. If you liked Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, I've obviously got to recommend Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I think it's definitely the superior of the two original films, and it does a much better job of balancing the fun tone and absurd story, not to mention the fact that Bill and Ted have most excellent chemistry together. If you like the scenes with death and want to see where much of the non-comedic inspiration came from, you might want to watch The Seventh Seal. It's a very different type of movie, but features a knight who plays a game of chess with death in the hopes of winning his life back. And if you want another movie that features Keanu Reeves traveling to hell, you should watch Constantine. It's not really a comedy and doesn't feature evil robots or aliens, but does provide an interesting visualization of hell. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what movie features your favorite representation of hell? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe or add it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies, the way life should be.